Dear students, let's discuss the first chapter Europe in Transition. A transition from medieval age to the modern age. The Middle Ages, 400 to 1500 AD, entered in Europe with the growth of Renaissance or rebirth, which assured in the spirit of discovery and adventure. This extraordinary flowering of the arts and sciences started in Italy and transformed European thought and culture. So, this is the picture of Hagia Sophia, one of the important monuments in the history of the world. It was built in the 6th century AD. Now, it is preserved as a history museum in Turkey. It is the epitome. Epitome means a perfect example of the architectural splendors of Constantinople, a city rich in historical monuments. Do you know the importance of Constantinople in the history of the world? Constantinople, the erstwhile capital of Eastern Roman Empire, has a unique place in the history of the world. What are the features of Constantinople? Features of Constantinople were it was a center of knowledge, an abode of scholars and a treasure trove of scholarly texts, a gateway from Asia to Europe. You see, when the Turks captured Constantinople in 1453, it resulted in the fall of the centuries old Eastern Roman Empire. Consequently, scholars, artists, and writers fled from Constantinople to nearby areas in great numbers. Many of them migrated to Italy. And why did the scholars migrate to Italy? Italy was a country that upheld the rich Greco Roman tradition. The rich Italian traders were the patrons of art, literature, and culture. These traders were keen to preserve the historical and cultural heritage. Then, hence the Italian cities. So, why did they migrate to Italy? Why did the scholars migrate to Italy? Italy was a country that upheld the rich Greco-Roman tradition. The rich Italian traders were the patrons of art, literature, and culture, and these traders were keen to preserve the historical and cultural heritage. Hence, the Italian cities furthered thinking and encouraged the spirit of learning among the immigrant scholars. By the end of the 13th century, the Renaissance, which began in Italy, flourished and spread to other nations. So, what is Renaissance? The new spirit of humanism inspired unique thoughts on the universe and human life. It promoted reasoning and the spirit of inquiry. A new awakening in all spheres of human life became visible in Europe, and it is known as Renaissance. So, what is Renaissance? A new awakening in all spheres of human life became visible in Europe, and it is known as the Renaissance. In literature, arts, fine arts, then music, painting, everything. Okay, so the new spirit of humanism inspired unique thoughts on the universe and human life. It promoted reasoning and the spirit of inquiry. Consequently, a new awakening in all spheres of human life became visible in Europe, and it is known as Renaissance. So, the fine arts, literature, and history in the medieval period were centered on religious ideology. The texts were invariably written in Greek and Latin, as these languages were considered elite and scholarly. By the dawn of the 13th century, Latin and Greek gave way to vernacular languages or regional languages like English, Spanish, and French. So, the writers of this period adopted the life of the common man as the central theme of their works. The literature of this period was no longer confined to religion and philosophy, but gave way to themes that depicted diverse aspects of human life. Similar changes occurred in other art forms like painting and sculpture. So this vision, primarily concerned with the various aspects of human life, is known as humanism. So the word humanism comes from the Latin studia humanitatis, studies of mankind. Studia humanitatis, studies of mankind. The writers of this period tried to describe human feelings and situations that people could easily understand. And they also insisted that intellectuals should concentrate on human problems rather than try and understand God's will. So, the writers of this period tried to describe human feelings and situations that people could easily understand. And they also insisted that intellectuals should concentrate on human problems rather than try and understand God's will. So, the art masters of the Renaissance. Renaissance in literature. Renaissance in literature, Petrarch, he is known as the father of Renaissance. He was one of the eminent writers of the Renaissance period. The magnum opus of Petrarch is Secretum. The masterpiece of Petrarch is Secretum. Then Dante, the famous work of Dante, Divine Comedy. Then another writer, Boccaccio, his famous work, the Decameron. Then Cervantes wrote Don Quixote. Then Erasmus in Praise of Folly. So the writers of this period, Petrarch became known for his poetry and Boccaccio for prose. Both Petrarch and Boccaccio began to imitate the styles of the ancient authors, and they tried to describe human feelings and situations. Next, Renaissance in arts. The famous painters of this period, Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci's famous work, The Last Supper and Mona Lisa. Leonardo da Vinci was an artist as well as a scientist. Leonardo da Vinci recognized the harmony of dimensions in the human form. So, Leonardo da Vinci's famous work, The Last Supper and Mona Lisa. The famous painting. The Mona Lisa is a famous painting of the Renaissance period. The mysterious smile of Mona Lisa, the enigmatic smile of Mona Lisa has led to much discussions and debates. Leonardo da Vinci was one of the famous artists of the Renaissance period, completed the painting in between AD 1503 and AD 1505. It is now preserved in the Paris Museum, Mona Lisa. Then, Michelangelo, another famous Renaissance artist. Michelangelo was a poet and philosopher. His famous painting, The Last Judgment. The next famous painter, the artist, Renaissance artist, Raphael. As a painter, he was skilled in creating perspective and in the delicate use of color. One of his greatest works, the Fresco School of Athens, portrays an imaginary gathering of ancient Greek philosophers and scientists. So, Raphael's famous painting, The School of Athens. Next, the sculptors and architects. The Door of the Florence Baptistry, a religious building by Lorenzo Ghiberti. Next, Donatello. His famous sculpture, Gattamelata. Gattamelata was his famous sculpture. Gattamelata. So the excellence in art was not limited to painting. Sublime works were created in the fields of architecture and sculpture. The prominent sculptors and architects, Lorenzo Ghiberti, his famous work, The Door of the Florence Baptistry, and Donatello, his famous painting, Gattamelata, the military leader. Equestrian statue of Gattamelata in Italy. So, military leaders, Gattamelata. So, this about the Renaissance in art. Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting, The Last Supper and Mona Lisa. Then, Michelangelo's famous work, The Last Judgment. Then Raphael, The School of Athens. Lorenzo Ghiberti, famous sculptor, The Door of the Florence Baptistry. And Donatello, Gattamelata, his famous work.